Maybe further out.
We've got to see it.
And then do it like this. Can you do that? Would that work?
It's a bit awkward, but maybe. Can this guy be to the side, maybe?
Actually, wait a second. No, I don't have time. I'm sorry. Go when we have time.
Shmilo, you're being recorded.
Okay.
Okay.
See you guys.
No, but it might work.
Yeah, but that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Block the other one.
Yeah. Yes, that'll do. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, let's just see. Can you just shut the door? Second, okay. Okay.
Kind of in frame, the camera.
No, don't worry.
Should we
Okay.
restart? Or?
No, just go.
Okay, so we're back again learning the Holy Alshech here in Tzfat with the Alshech Academy. And this week's parasha Vayetzey. And we're going to learn all about Yaakov Avinu's eventful journey, all of the events that happened and the miracles that transpired on this journey from Eretz Israel to Chutz La'aretz, and all of the events that went there. And we're going to go through the psukim, lots of interesting interpretations and questions. Bezrat Hashem, Nasem V'Natzliach. So the pasuk starts, Vayetzey Yaakov mi Beersheva. Yaakov departed Beersheva, Vayelech Haran, and he went to Haran. And the questions obviously begin when we also learn the psukim of last week's parasha, which Moshe will introduce soon, where we see already a long description of Yaakov Avinu's departure and journey and the destination. So this introductory pasuk seems to be superfluous at best. So it says Moshe, Ra'ui lasim lev sechel v'havin, we should pay attention and focus our mind to the psukim. We have to ask these following questions and observations. Echad, the first question, Kesher Amro Vayetzey Yaakov. Elechet Esav al Ishmael. So if we go back to previous parasha, the last thing it mentions is, the last pasuk is, and Esav went to Yishmael and married Yishmael's daughter Mochlat. And that was his new wife. Al Nashab, in addition to his previous wives, who were Chiti, he now took a Yishmaelite wife. So the question is, why was that inserted right in the middle of this whole discussion, which begins with Yaakov Avinu's departure, and then suddenly there's an insert of a seemingly unnecessary or unrelated thing at all. Ve'ifsik ben inyan Yaakov ben inyan Esav, suddenly in the middle of talking about Yaakov as the character, we throw in Esav's individual story of getting married to this new woman. Kizulat Masher Katav Rashi, even though Rashi does suggest an explanation. So, right, what does Rashi say? That it's talking about Esav because it says that Esav saw that Yaakov was blessed by his father and he was told to marry a non-Canaanite woman. So Esav therefore went and married Ishmael's daughter. So Rashi is explaining how that is relevant to the current and why chronologically it belongs here. But the question is, Rav Moshe is saying, is that it can't only be a chronological connection, meaning that I have to start talking about Esav because at the same time, or due to the same events that led to Yaakov's departure, Esav also went and got married to a new woman, because that would mean that there's actually a break in the middle of the narrative, and the only reason it's there is because of Esav, and really the narrative is all about Yaakov already. So why are we breaking the narrative? So Rav Moshe says we have to realize that this is also relevant to the Yaakov Avinu story, and we'll see soon how Esav's newfound zivug or woman has anything to do with Yaakov in his specific journey. Number 2, the question is, Kalichat Yaakov, Padena Aram, Ne'emar Zeh Shalosh Regalim. Yaakov Avinu's departure towards Padan Aram, in Haran, where he went to get Haran to marry, to meet Abraham's family, is mentioned 3 separate times in the pasuk. It says, first of all, Vayishlach Yitzchak et Yaakov. Yitzchak sent Yaakov, Vayelech Padan Aram, and he went to Padan Aram. So we seem to have already been notified where Yaakov is heading. So why does we need to then have another 2 times? Where is it mentioned again? This is also in last week's parasha. Vayishma Yaakov el aviv ve'imo. Yaakov listened and heeded his father's and mother's advice and command. Vayelech Padan Aram. He went to Padan Aram. So here we see again a relation of this story happening. But then this parasha starts off again. Vayetzey Yaakov mi Beersheva vayelech Harana. So we seem to be mentioning Yaakov's journey excessively. And obviously we know, learning Alshech, that nothing is just mentioning things again. There's always another angle being hinted to, being mentioned, being discussed. So obviously when there's 3 mentions of the same thing, we must not be fooled into thinking that it's just embellishments and repetitions. Number 3, Ba'amron Lamala, the pasuk says, Vayar Esav ki berach Yitzchak et Yaakov. And then, this is in pasuk Vav, and then it skips the pasuk, and then the pasuk continues after Esav saw his father blessing Yaakov, and he told him to go to Padan Aram. Then, skipping a pasuk, the pasuk continues then saying, Vayar Esav, Esav observed another thing. What did he observe? Kiraot b'not Canaan, that the women of Canaan are unfavorable in his father's eyes, and therefore the pasuk continues to say that he went on to marry Ishmael's daughter. But the question is, why does the pasuk break the narrative and says in between Esav's 2 observations, Esav observed one thing, that his father commanded Yaakov to go to Padan Aram. That was the first thing he saw. Then the pasuk breaks the Esav observation of the events, and it goes back to discussing Yaakov. It says, Vayishma Yaakov el aviv ve'imo. We're going back to discussing what Yaakov was doing. He heeded his father's command, and he went to Padan Aram. Then we go back to Esav's side of the story, and we say Esav observed his father's disapproval of Canaanite woman, and he married again. So why are we going backwards and forwards? There's one thing, the previous question of why we mention Esav, that's one question. But then if you do mention Esav, we should probably keep it together in one cohesive chain of events of Esav's observations of what was going on. Why are we suddenly jumping backwards and forwards from Esav's storyline to Yaakov's storyline? Velo yitachen lomar. It wouldn't be right to say שבכלל מה שראה עשיו הוא ששמע יעקב אל אביו. So Rav Moshe is inserting a suggestion which he refutes immediately, and he says maybe we can read the passage like this: Vayar Esav ki berach Yitzchak et Yaakov. Esav saw that Yitzchak blessed Yaakov while he was commanding him to leave to Padan Aram. And then the next passage says, and Yaakov heeded his father's command, meaning Esav saw that as well. That's part of Esav's observation. He saw that his father blessed him and commanded him to go, and he saw that Yaakov heeded that suggestion, and he actually carried it out. So that says Rav Moshe, that would be right if it didn't say again, Vayar Esav kirot panan, because if you're talking about a bunch of things that Esav observed, then you would just say, and he also saw V'chi ra'ot Canaan. If you add another thing, he doesn't have to say again Vayar, because it's all just following the same original discussion. V'od ki ech ra'a she'v'elech Padan Aram v'achar kach kirot b'not Canaan v'na'afochu. So another reason Rav Moshe is telling us why we can't say that Esav is observing Yaakov heeding his father's command and going to Padan Aram, because that would mean that he actually saw him heeding and actually arriving to Padan Aram. And that was obviously a journey which he eventually got to, especially as we know, Rav Moshe will mention it soon, that he actually hid in the shul, in the Bet Shem Ve'ever for 14 years. So him actually arriving to Padan Aram was way later. So then he wouldn't be able to observe him arriving in Padan Aram and then go and say that he saw his father's disapproval of Canaanite women. So obviously Ramosh is saying that has to be that we actually are breaking the narrative, going from Esav's observation back to Yaakov's heeding the command of his father, only then going back to another observation of Esav, and we have to then know what these two observations are. Okay? ועוד, במה שדיברה לו אמו שעשו מבקש להורגו, לא ייתכן ששמע עשו שאין ספק כי בסתר דיברה. So, another question he asks is that you can't say that Esav saw that Yaakov was commanded by both his father and his mother, because it says that Yitzchak obviously commanded Yaakov to go to Padan Aram in public. And that was it wasn't a secret affair, but his mother, Rivka, told Yaakov that I've heard either through prophecy, like the rabbis say, or she found out because Esav told someone, and then she got word of it. But either way, Rivka summoned Yaakov and told him to go to Padan Aram in private as a secret, and she said, "Your brother's trying to kill you. You better run before it's too late." So Esav would not have known that Yaakov was heeding his mother's command as well as his father's. So if the pasuk says that Yaakov, Vayishma Yaakov el aviv ve'el imo, he was heeding his father's and his mother's command, that suggests already another reason, another hint, and another proof that this pasuk is not referring to Esav observing this, rather to us being told this fact, and therefore it breaks up the Esav narrative, and we have to understand what is going on here. So we see Rav Moshe is already planting the seeds for additional information and important chain of events that was happening here with Yaakov and Esav. And as Rav Moshe is always so sensitive to detail and sensitive to repetition and to the narrative between the lines, we're going to see here how important this sequence is and what really was all happening here and how Hashem was running the show, and in order to protect Yaakov in this dangerous time. Number 4, מה הצורך הודיע לנו שראה כי ברך יצחק את יעקב ושלח אותו? So why do we need to say that Esav saw? Right, the first observation it says is that Esav saw that Yitzchak commanded Yaakov to go to find a wife in Padan Aram. Then the pasuk goes on 2 psukim later to say, and Esav saw that his father disapproves of Canaanite women, and he went ahead and married a Ishmaelite woman. So ultimately, the only thing that's relevant for us is to understand why, to give context to Esav's new woman that he took. We have to give context to why he suddenly took a new Ishmaelite daughter, and the reason is because he saw his father's disapproval of the Canaanites. So that's the only thing that is important to mention here of Esav's observation of the events. So we need to now, basically, what Moshe is saying, we need to understand what is being referred to when it says that Esav saw his father commanding Yaakov to go. That has nothing to do with the fact that he took a woman. So obviously that seems to be already indicating something that Esav observed that is important for us to know, and that's going to have an effect on what transpired. It says that Esav saw his father blessing Yaakov while he commanded him to leave. Right, this was the second blessing he got, not the blessing he got at the brachot. This was as Yitzchak is telling Yaakov to go to Padan Aram. It says Vayivarech Yitzchak et Yaakov, and he told him V'yiten lecha Elohim et birkat Avraham. He gave him the continuation of the Abrahamic blessings that already were mentioned in Parashat Lech Lecha, which Yitzchak received from Hashem after Abraham's passing. And now Yitzchak is basically telling Yaakov that you are the one to continue this Abrahamic spiritual blessing. So this seems to be unnecessarily mentioned in the Esav's observation of the blessing. Isn't the point here? It's rather the command, it seems, that's the most important part, that he told him to go to Padan Aram. There's a word lemor, as we know, Rav Moshe is always sensitive to the word lemor, that lemor has to mean that there's something being repeated to others. And here there's no context of Yitzchak's command to go to Padan Aram is not lemor to anyone. He was telling it to Yaakov, and Yaakov just had to go and do it. There was no repetition of the command. So what's the lemor here mean in this context? V'od shu hefech haseder v'shilachoto, v'yitzav alav lemor, v'yitzav alav v'shilachoto. So this order of events mentioned in the pasuk seem to be disjointed, because it says that Yaakov was sent by his father to Padan Aram, and then it says that he commanded him to take a wife. And Ramosha's understanding that being sent to Padan Aram means that he was actually sent off, dispatched. That would mean that it's the last interaction between him and his father, because that's when he's leaving the home. But obviously the correct order would be that first he commanded him to go get married in Padan Aram, and then he saw him off. So that seems to be chronologically incorrect. Question number 5, please. On Vayetzey Yaakov. Achar Omro Lamala Vayelech Padan Aram. V'halo Yitzia Kodemet El Hagaat Mekom Hachefetz. So now Rav Moshe is asking, going back to our parasha. So right now, till now we've been discussing the end of last parasha, which is strongly connected to this parasha. But now we're going to say that after the pasuk says he went to Padan Aram twice, then how can you then say again Vayetzey Yaakov mi Beersheva? I can understand you want to mention him going to Padan Aram again, which we asked already before. We need to understand why it's mentioned 3 times. But that only accounts for why it mentions 3 times that he went to Padan Aram. But this pasuk goes and adds another detail, saying he left Beersheva. Now, you obviously can't have left again, seemingly, after he is already on the way, and he's going to the Yelech Padan Aram. He's on the way already. So that's another detail in the. It's not only just superfluous; it's also incorrect to be able to mention the departure after he's already on the journey. Number 6, Kefel pasuk Vayetze vayelach she'im halach mi lo yada sheyatza. Now Rabbi Moshe is asking the same question in a different way. Let's say it wouldn't be chronologically incorrect, the order, but even just the need to mention that he left. Why does he have to say, and he left Beersheva, and he went to Haran? Just say he went to Haran, we know where he is. And that's why actually we have the Rashi on this from the Chazal, that Yaakov's leaving, right, made a big impression on the surroundings. Because when a tzaddik is in the city, he's the splendor, the light, the love of the city, of the area that he's around. And when he leaves, it's noticeable, where all of the light and the energy that he was exuding when he was around is gone now. So there's a mention of the Vayetzey Yaakov. So that's the Rashi. But Rav Moshe is obviously going to say a different context of what the leaving is about here. Zayin, question number 7. Omro vayelech Haran. Im kvar halach lecharan, en achar kach paga b'makom. So we have a bit of a question here. This is something that the rabbis already address, where it says, Vayelech Haran, Yaakov left, Vayetzey Yaakov mi Beersheva, he left Beersheva, Vayelech Haran, and he went to Haran. So seemingly, if you wouldn't see anything else in the Torah, you would understand that he's already arrived into Haran. That was his destination, and he went there. But then we find an inconsistency where it says, Vayifga b'makom. He came across the place where the sun set, and he went to sleep, and he found out this was the house of God, where there was Bet El, Jerusalem, Luz. All of these are cities in Eretz Israel still. They're not in Padan Aram. So it seems to be that he went to Haran, but then he somehow found himself back in Israel. And that's what the rabbis in the Gemara and the Midrash go on about, and there's different opinions how to understand the whole sequence of events. But the rabbis basically say there was some kind of backtracking and some kind of kfitzat haderech involved, and there was like interesting chain of events that happened there. So what does Rav Moshe bring? He did arrive all the way to Haran, but then he took note of the fact that along his journey he passed the Bet HaMikdash, the Temple Mount that was still the Mount of Moriah at the time. And what did he say? Avarti al makom she'itpalalu avotai. I passed the place where my fathers and forefathers have prayed. V'lo itpalalti. I didn't take a moment to pray. So he felt very bad that he didn't take this opportunity to leave, before leaving Israel, to pray and to establish his connection to the Temple Mount And now he's all the way in Chutz La'aretz, who knows for how long. So v'chazar leCharan, and he started heading back. V'az vayifga, Rashi explains that the whole story that happened, that on the way back, Hashem saw that he was putting an effort in to go back, so Hashem moved Hara Maria towards him, and then he had the whole dream with the ladder. So Rav Moshe is saying that the pasuk is so off in terms of the retelling of the events, that so much so that the rabbis made a whole story out of it. That there was a kfitz at the derech and coming back, and then everything moved around. And Rav Moshe is saying that obviously indicates that there was something so off here, something so glaringly needing to be explained, that the rabbis then introduced this whole story. Whereas Moshe is saying, what about a pshat? Let me tell you a pshat level understanding of the sequence of events in the Psukim. Number 8, Amrova Yifga b'makom. What does it mean that he happened upon, he met the place? If you could, we just want to say that the mountain met him, that suddenly the mountain moved towards where he was. He could have told me this, the pasuk. He doesn't have to say the word pegia. Pegia is an interesting word. The Midrash brings a host of, precisely 4 actually, people that are documented to have had kfitzat haderech when they reached their destination way faster than naturally possible. And Rav Moshe is actually going to go into it soon. The different versions of kfitzat haderech that they all experience. Very interesting. But here the pasuk he brings here, Ashta Eretz Betzamta. He brings a pasuk in Tehillim that describes kfitzat haderech in different ways than vayifga b'makom, that he happened upon the place. So obviously Rav Moshe is going to tell us that it seems to be hinting towards what type of kfitzat haderech was at play here when it says vayifga. And he also adds that we know that Yaakov Avinu established the prayer of Arvit, of the nighttime. Where do we know this from? Because it says vayifga b'makom, and the rabbis say, and pegia ela tefillah. Pegia means prayer, and it means like happening upon God and beseeching Him. So now, Rav Moshe is saying, you see as well again from the rabbis that because they find a strange word at play, they interpret it to mean hinting to another dimension of what was happening here. So again, we see that the pshat of vayifga is alluding to something more than just the chain of events, because it's a strange word. V'l'Rashi zal shenetak har Moriah balakan yoter hara ra'ui atek luz v'yelech lahar Moriah. So here he's asking a very interesting question. Yaakov Avinu went to Haran. He regretted not praying, so he started walking back. He got halfway back, and Hashem said, "I see you're serious about this." So Hashem moved Hara Moriah to where he was. So Rashi asks, "Why don't?" So Rav Moshe is asking on this medrash that Rashi brings, why can't you do the opposite? Move where he's standing to Hara Moriah. Why should Hara Moriah, the holy mountain, have to move if there could be an equally helpful solution by moving his location to Har Moriah? It shouldn't be that the greater one is subservient to the lesser one.
Well, you're suggesting that the Har is most senior than high, more elevated.
It's Har, it's Beit HaMikdash, Temple Mount.
The
Temple
actual
Mount.
person?
No, not the person, but the earth he was standing on could have moved. We have earth moving, right? The geological matter. So instead of moving the whole mountain to him, they could have moved
I
his
see what you mean.
his tile of soil.
Okay, but
Like the magical carpet would be a magical soil bed. Number 9. מה העניין הודיע אלוהים אותנו כי בא השמש ושלקח מאבני המקום וששכב במקום ההוא. The Midrash again here talks a lot about this details of Yaakov Avinu's sleep in this night, where the sun went down, and the Midrash says the sun went down early. He took stones. So the Midrash says it was the stones of the Akedah. The Midrash says that he took 12 stones and they became one. So there's a lot of discussions around these stones. But Rav Moshe is telling us, again, this is showing that it's quite obvious that these details are unnecessary. If this wasn't an important detail, it wouldn't talk about so much detail about, because obviously Yaakov went to sleep many times, and sometimes he took a pillow, sometimes he stepped outside in the rocks. We don't go into such detail about things unless they have significant messages and important part of the narrative. Obviously, we also know that rabbis say that it was the first night he slept in 14 years. So that this sleep was a very central story here, but Ramosh is going to put it into the pshat, into this whole weave that he's going through. Number 10, it says that in order for Yaakov to have the zchut of sleeping in this holy place, Hashem made the sun set before its time. Lama asa Hashem kacha? Why did Hashem need to do that? Does Hashem need to bring down the entire solar system and break its natural cycles so he can sleep? Hashem can make him tired, and the sun can be shining, and he'll just pass out. What's the purpose of specifically of actually doing this unnatural, miraculous thing at that time? Yud Aleph, 2 more questions. Ma inyan hachalom hazeh shel chalam? Havon navo derech hayashor. So Moshe is saying the dream that he went through with the angels going up and down the ladder seems to be very. All the midrashim talk about the different exiles he saw. He saw the angels of Chutz La'aretz. There's lots of different explanations of what these angels were, and Rav Moshe is trying, as I say, let's try and get to a more straightforward, without getting into lots of extra, deeper midrashim type of stuff. How does this dream fit into the general theme of what was happening? Number 12, Ma inyan malachei Elohim olim v'yordim. What does it mean that the angels went up and down? Does it mean that they went up and then down, or does it mean it went up and down simultaneously? It seems to be there's different midrashim about that, because otherwise, why are the angels going up before they go down? Usually angels come from heaven. So the fact that we mentioned going up first sparks a whole discussion of what is the unique situation of these angels. Okay, so that's the end of all the questions, and we're seeing already little sparks of where the discussion seems way more deeper than what's happening here. Yaakov isn't just going. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that Rav Moshe will kindly, in his great wisdom, unpack for us. So Rav Moshe is asking a very simple question to begin the discussion. He says, first of all, why was Yaakov leaving? Yaakov was leaving because Esav wants to kill him. Now, it wasn't a secret where he was going. Yitzhak announced it very helpfully. He says, you go to Padan Aram, find a wife there, while Esav was right there. So that's not very much of a hiding place if Esav knows where you're going. Bi'idat Esav ki olech, if Esav knows where he's going to be, then there's no point. Ki alo yada Esav v'shama mipi Yitzchak aviv. As the pasuk itself relates, that Esav saw and heard his father bless Yaakov and command him at the time to go to Padan Aram. Why was his heart not full of fear that Esav is going to get so angry that he'll come after him?
Whose heart? Yaakov.
Yaakov, right? So he's fearful of Esav, so he goes somewhere, but he lets him know where he's going. Why is he not fearful that Esav will come after him with weapons and to kill him? So you could say, but that's not true, says Rav Moshe, that Yaakov was confident in his righteousness, that he was able to overcome the threat of Esav. Or another thing you could say, which isn't true, he knew that during his father's lifetime, he wouldn't kill him. Because that would actually be true, because the pasuk does relate Esav's thoughts. He says, "Vayomer Esav b'libo." Esav thought to himself, the days of mourning of my father will come, and I'll kill my brother. So there was the truth to that. That as long as Yitzchak's alive, he's got an insurance policy that Esav won't come after him. But it seems to be that Yaakov didn't really rely on that. He couldn't trust. Esav was unpredictable. So right now he's still trying to respect his father, but he might just get drunk one day and forget about all of his respect for his father and just come out to kill him. And as we see this in the Midrash, the beginning of the parasha, that Yaakov was actually very fearful of Esav. And it says in the Midrash, Esa'inai al-harim. As Yaakov was heading out, running away from Esav, he said, I look up to the mountains. And the Midrash says, don't read Heharim, the mountains, El Hahorim. I look up to my parents, to my fathers. Hem Ha'avot. Amar Ma'ayin Yavo Ezri. Right? And it says a very powerful thing, that Yaakov was feeling like he should lose hope in Hashem. Should I lose my trust in my Maker? And then he strengthened himself. He says, no, I am not going to lose my strength in my Maker. Ezri me'im Adonai aseh shamayim va'aretz. I trust that my hope will come from Hashem. So that's the Medrash there, very strong, kind of revealing Yaakov's inner emotional turmoil as he was going through this, and he basically goes through this whole parak 121 in Tehillim, describing Yaakov Avinu's helplessness of Ezri, Me'ayin yavo Ezri, where will my help come from? And he's convincing himself and going strengthening his emunah. But when Moshe is bringing this to show that Yaakov was actually very fearful of what might happen. So why would he then go somewhere that Esav can find him? Im Kozen as well, when it comes to the question of whether he relies on his own righteousness, Lo yutar leish tzadik lismoch al hanes. A righteous man is not allowed to rely on miracles, or lavi atzmo l'yedei sakana, to bring himself into danger. She'alo chavikim et rega ktiv, the pasuk says, hide for a little bit until ad yavor zam, until the fury is over. So basically, the pasuk doesn't suggest to face things head on and rely on miracles. The pasuk wants us, Hashem wants us to have to take measures. So why is Yaakov going to a useless hiding place that is the best kept secret in town? You could say, Ki hen zot kavanat On Vayetzey vayelach, she'haya lo lomar lalechet. So Ramosh is now going to explain the psukim. One part of the psukim according to this current question. The pasuk says he went out of Beersheba, vayelech, and he went to Haran. So it says Ramoshe, it shouldn't say vayelech, which means that he actually got there. It should say lalechet. He went out of Beersheba with the intention or with the destination of Haran, but it still doesn't mean that he got there yet. And this is obvious when it says vayivga b'makom, because the Torah, it's going back in time where he actually hasn't yet gotten to his destination, and he's still en route. So here Rav Moshe is introducing the Gemara in Megillah that tells us, as we all know, that Yaakov did not go straight to Haran. Yaakov was 63 years old at the time of the blessings. That's when he had to run away for his life. For 14 years he hid in the Beit HaMidrash. Nitman is like he insulated himself. He hid it. He surrounded himself with this Beit HaMidrash. That was for 14 years. That was until 77 years of age. For 7 years he worked for Lavan until he got married. Then that altogether he was 84 when he got married. So that's the Gemara that basically works out the chronological sequence of events of the timeline of Yaakov Avinu's years. What is the rabbis telling us? As Ramosha, he would say, when he left Beersheba, he didn't head to Haran. He went to Shem Va'ever's Beit HaMidrash. Only after 14 years later did he head to Haran. Why did he do that, says Ramosha? What was the purpose of going to Shem Va'ever at this time? Because he knew, says Ramosha, he didn't trust Esav, and he knew that Esav will want to kill him. The second he's en route going through the vast Mesopotamian deserts and barren lands, Esav will run after him and kill him. So now, how did he manage to fool Esav? He took a detour. Instead of going out to Badan Aram, he went in the land of Israel itself. And where did he go? Midrash Ever. He went to the school of Ever. What does it mean Nitman? He was hidden. You could say he was hidden because he was learning Torah and he was focused on the Torah and nothing else in the world mattered to him at the time. But what we're saying is also means that he was hidden from Esav's danger. He actually used it as a hiding spot. Ki tamun me'esav ayasham. V'achar kikein misham lasacharana. Asher lo yeda Esav asher ito asher yelech bo Esav shouldn't know that he was on the way when he would be heading to Padan Aram. So because Esav in the beginning was looking for him, he didn't know where he was, and then he was hiding in the shul. But the second Esav now can't he can't keep tabs on him, and he didn't know where he was. So Esav would never know when he's heading out finally to go and cause him any trouble on the way. It's actually interesting that lots of tzaddikim were hidden in caves before they became their final level of greatness. We have Moshe Rabbeinu as well. The Midrash says he was in 10 years in prison in Yitro's cave or dungeon. It also talks about Avram Avinu, one of the 10 tests that he went through, according to the Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, Rashi brings, is that he was put in prison for many years, 10 years I think as well. And here we have Yaakov being hidden in the Beit HaMidrash, like hiding from a threat. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Yosef HaTzadik. It seems to be a big, and obviously if you're into Chabad Rebbes, there's also a lot of prison stuff preceding to Torah revelation. So it seems to be like a very interesting idea, where, times of darkness in general, times of having to really, fear for your life, and have a certain level of limited movement and fear of danger is what leads to greatness. So maybe now that we have all this in Tzfat, people going to miklats and staying in protected spaces, so that should help us reveal Torah like never before. But that was a side point. So then we continue Rav Moshe. So Rav Moshe is basically telling us that how did Yaakov deal with Esav's threat? He went to hide in shul, and that was his bunker. There's two stories here. Why does it say Vayetzey Yaakov mi Beersheva? Yaakov left Beersheva. But wait a minute, he didn't leave Beersheva to go to Haran. In between these two parts of the pasuk, Vayetzey Yaakov mi Beersheva, and the second half of the pasuk Vayelech Harana, please insert a whole 14-year gap where he went out of Beersheva to an undisclosed location, and then when he was ready, when Esav wouldn't know that he's going, Vayelech Harana, he went to the next step of his journey. That is the Rav Moshe's beautiful explanation on this specific part of the pasuk. That's why it says Vayetzey and Vayelech, and why he wasn't scared of Esav, even though Esav knew where he was heading, because he didn't know when he was heading there. Now, says Rav Moshe, however, let's take apart what was going on here. In order to explain all of the questions and observations that we made in the Psukim, we should take note of the following. The Torah is hinting to us. The Torah is trying to awaken our ears, says Rav Moshe. This is Rav Moshe's very powerful thing. He takes a pasuk, he doesn't want to take anything for granted. Rav Moshe is teaching us. Every word in the pasuk is accountable for. And if you're not understanding why it says it, then you've got to know that it's a question. There's not just a question that's, obviously this is the way it says it, this is the way the pasuk. No, it's important. It's telling you something, right? We see this in the Midrash all the time, and we've seen this all the time down in Holy Alshech, that everything has an underlying message, an underlying between the lines. Read between the lines. Take the Torah's words seriously, right? When it comes to the halachot of the Torah, every word, every vav, every separate, everything mentioned in the same pasuk is taken. We make hundreds of halachot and practical ramifications of every minute letter in the Torah. So when it comes to the story, says Rav Moshe, is the same thing. The Torah wants us to learn lots of messages, learn lots of nisim that Hashem did for the Avot. Right? Learning about the Avot's lives are really important. It's a whole Torah in itself. To learn the derech eretz, the nisim, the emunah that the Avot had. Okay? So this is what Rav Moshe is going to tell us. He's going to teach us a whole new layer of nisim that we don't know if reading the pasuk without learning Rav Moshe Alshech. We don't know how much Hashem is involved. And the truth is, I'm thinking now that it could be that it's kind of like maybe even Yaakov himself didn't know. We're going to see in a minute what Rav Moshe is pointing out to be miracles and to be how interventions from Hashem. It could be Yaakov Avinu himself didn't know, didn't pay attention at the time, because it's not the standard narrative. It comes from focusing on thinking back and being appreciative of the details when we learn the Torah and of our own lives. I'm trying to think now, like in our own lives as well. Like things seem simple, but if we focus and we look, we're introspective and we focus and trying to thank Hashem for things, then we suddenly find patterns. We find things that we didn't realize really went our way, and it could have gone any other way. So yeah, B'ezrat Hashem, we should merit to really focus in on our lives and find miracles. So let's see. Let's see what Rav Moshe is going to do here. Ki hu yitbarach Hashem, the blessed one, leman hitzil et tzaddik be'ira'ato. Hashem, in order to save Yaakov from the danger he was facing, me'aver pikchim upokeach ivrim. Hashem made the blind or the clueless or the things that people didn't notice, he made them notice, and things that Hashem didn't want people to notice, they didn't pay attention to. And this is the type of miracle that is a miracle that happens all the time. You know, like, did the cop see, did the guy notice, did the wrong person see things at the wrong time? You know, these things, like, it's up to Hashem at every moment in time to intimately be involved in people's minds and kind of help them see what they need to see and not notice what they don't need to notice in order to help the tzaddik or the Jew. So now Rav Moshe says, with this idea of knowing that Hashem was making sure everybody was seeing what they need to see and not seeing anything that will cause trouble, we're going to notice this whole theme fitting in with this whole story. The honor of the tzaddik is of great importance to Hashem. Because the tzaddik is the one who in his merit, the entire creation, the entire universe, the entire existence exists only based on the tzaddik's righteousness and connection to Hashem. The entire reality of existence, was mentioned later on. Rav Moshe is going to talk about the trio of worlds, the trio of the physical, the world of the galaxies and the stars, and the world of angels are the three levels of existence that the early philosophers and Rishonim mentioned, and Yaakov Avinu was responsible single-handedly as the tzaddik of that time to ensure that these things continue to be created constantly and to receive shefa from Hashem. So because he is the engine room of the entire existence, he's the fire that's keeping it going, therefore Hashem pays extra attention to Yaakov's needs. The entire existence, the entire creation is given to the tzaddik based on his needs and his what Hashem needs to give him at this time. So Rav Moshe is going to introduce us a Musar. Musar is something the Baal Turim brings a lot, is whenever the Torah mentions a specific phrase or a specific word that isn't mentioned so commonly in the Torah, and we then see that there's a certain parallel between these places that is mentioned, and then the Baal Turim and sometimes others explain why this phrase is mentioned in these specific places. So here we have the word ve'enei. The word ve'enei is mentioned 3 times in the entire Tanakh. The first one is ve'enei Leah rakot, when it talks about Leah, when Yaakov saw Rachel and Leah's eyes were soft or were less attractive. And the rabbis explain it's because she was crying a lot because of the Esav saga that she had to go through. Rav Moshe is going to mention it soon. The next pasuk says, "Ve'einei Yisrael kavdu." Yisrael's eyes, Yaakov's eyes, were heavy. They couldn't see properly. This was the end of his life. Ve'einei Rishaim tichlena. There's another pasuk in Iyov that says, "The eyes of the wicked destroy them," or the eyes of the wicked get destroyed. So what does this mean that we have these 3 psukim seemingly connected through the common use of ve'enei? V'ha'inyan, says Rav Moshe, ki hinei oranu yitbarach godel hashgachato. Hashem wants to show us the great level of hashgacha, of divine intervention and providence that He has for the tzaddikim. V'som kol ma'yanav liyasher derech hatzaddik. Hashem uses all of His resources to ensure a smooth path and a smooth sailing for the tzaddik. V'laharim ha'michshalot, to remove any stumbling blocks. V'lasim ha'makashin mishar, anything crooked should be straightened out. L'man yalech lavetach darko v'laraglo lo yigof, that he should be safe and sound from any type of problem. So now, we're going back to the reason Yaakov Avinu had to leave town, which is what? That he had to run away from Esav. So now, Halo yadanu, says Ramoshe, ki his hand zot haytayim Esav lechabel Torah v'lishma b'kolam. One thing Esav was famous for was listening to his parents and respecting his parents. V'kamamar b'masachet Kiddushin, as the Gemara says in Kiddushin, El Meshabach Atzmo shemechabed Torah. There was one rabbinical student who was boasting about his level of honoring his parents. Amru lo adayin lo igata l'masha hayam mechabed Esav. They told him, don't get ahead of yourself because you haven't even reached yet what Esav used to do. So don't get too full of yourself. So we see that Esav was very particular in honoring his parents. So now says the Ramoshe, v'yinei me'adavar alaz hayta yotzet takala gdola al Yaakov v'Leah. Because Esav is so meticulous about honoring his parents and their wishes, this would have caused a great issue for Yaakov and Leah. Vuhu. What would be the issue? Ki alo Esav shama ozno v'teven Leah ki ra'ot benot Canaan v'tovot benot Lavan b'nei Yitzchak aviv. So now, Esav noticed Yitzchak commanding Yaakov, do not marry a Canaanite woman, rather you go and marry your mother's brother's family. So if Esav would really pay attention to everything Yitzchak is saying and want to respect his wishes all the way, he would say, oh, my father doesn't like Canaanite women. He does want us to marry into Lavan's family. He would then go to Haran and marry Leah. And that would be a big disaster for both Yaakov, having Esav, who he's trying to run away from, be there right with him, and for Leah, who didn't want to marry Esav. So here we had to have Esav, even though his whole life's mission is respecting his parents' wishes, Hashem had to mess with his head that he doesn't heed his entire wish of his father. He'll only listen to half of the sentence. Right? So Ramesh is going to break us down the whole situation. So what did Esav hear Yaakov saying? Do not take a Canaanite woman, rather go to Padan Aram, v'kach lecha isha mibnot Lavan. Go to the daughters of Lavan. V'hinei im kasher sama libo kirot b'not Canaan. If while he was paying attention to his father's wish that the daughters of Canaan are not to be married, yasim gam ken kitovot b'not Lavan b'naviv, if he would have also paid attention to the second half of the statement, that Lavan's daughters are preferable, he would have gone to Lavan instead of Ishmael. If he wouldn't take both of Lavan's daughters, he would at least take the older one and leave the younger one to Yaakov. If he would have done that, this would be a terrible disaster. Yaakov has nowhere to run to. He definitely wouldn't. Even if he could run away, Yaakov and Esav will be on the same journey to Lavan, and that would be a complete disaster. He's trying to run away from him. He would strike him with force. And he mentions here, as we know, the Midrash, that Yaakov actually was attacked by Eliphaz, Esav's son, and Eliphaz was convinced by Yaakov to not kill him. And the Midrash says why? Because Yaakov used to teach Eliphaz Torah. So he had this relationship with him, and he felt the certain gratitude. So Eliphaz let him off and just took away all of his belongings. But Esav wouldn't have done that. So we see basically being en route to Haran, with Esav being anywhere in the vicinity, is grave danger. So now, v'gam Leah yimar lamod. Leah would also suffer immensely from this. Ki halo hasher haya ilay Leah rakod. Why were Leah's eyes soft and tear-filled? Ki halo yamiliv kod bal tipo b'gor. All she could cry for, all she would wish for, is not to fall as a wife to Esau. Pen mahoy marag dalag dalag. Maybe they'll give the older to the older one and the younger to the younger one, as people were actually suggesting. That was the local street the folks' talk of what should happen in this case. What did Hashem do? Hashem gave Esau wishful denial of his father's wishes. Hashem made that Esau should only pay attention to the beginning of his father's command. Only on half. He shouldn't focus on the second half, which said that Lavan daughters are the way to go. Only talk about the negativity of the Canaanites. Therefore he went to Ishmael and not to Lavan. And therefore this follows on. This was the end of last parasha. So now that Esav has gone to Ishmael, he's not planning to go to Lavan, because he didn't pay attention to that part of his father's statement. Now Vayetzey Yaakov can leave, and he's not going to be on the same journey as him. And also Vayelech Harana, he can go to Haran, Shel Malei Kain, if wouldn't have had the situation where Esav had a half listening situation. Lo haya Esav manichol agia sham, he wouldn't be able to go to Haran even. Kasher nichol ifaz, kasher nishapo b'tzavat aviv. Then he wouldn't have done that if he would have met him on the way, and that he would have been in danger. So that's why the pasuk actually follows on from the story of Esav marrying an Ishmaelite, and that was actually what enabled Vayetzey Yaakov. So we're saying this is explaining why this parasha starts off mentioning another time that Yaakov left town, because it's actually saying, as a follow-on from the previous parasha, how was he able to go to Haran? Why was that not the same place that Esav was going to? Because Esav listened only halfway and married a Ishmaelite. לכן הקדים ואמר וירא עשיו כי ברך יצחק את יעקב ולא בבלתי שמוע ששלח אותו בן ארם לא שת דיבר גם על זאת. So what he's saying is that it says that Esav, the pasuk mentions that Esav heard and he saw that Yaakov was commanded to go to Padan Aram to marry a daughter of Lavan. And the pasuk is trying to emphasizing the level of the miracle. That the pasuk is telling you, Esav was fully aware of his father's wishes. And this was a grave danger that Yaakov suddenly was in because of his tendency to respect his father. But still, even though he saw that, he only saw so it's clear that Esav knew that this was his father's wish. So you could say that Esav he felt that Yaakov wasn't told specifically to go to Padan Aram, meaning his father didn't have any specific preference with Lavan's daughters. It was just a suggestion. It's like, okay, so not the Canaanites. So who do we have? Oh, for example, you can go to Padan Aram. So that could have been, that's how Esav did pay attention to his father's request and actually interpreted it in a way that allows him to go to Ishmael. But that's not true. So there was a miracle here, meaning Yitzchak's attention was clearly to go to Padan Aram specifically. Meaning the blessing that he gave him was specifically to go to Lavan's children. So that means that he was telling Yaakov not just as a suggestion, he was giving him his blessing to go marry Lavan's daughters. And that indicates that it's not just a suggestion, it's actually a strong command and insinuating his desire for that to be the case. And this just exacerbates the miracle of Esav not paying attention to that, even though all he was doing was respecting his father. That was his mission. lo tikach not Canaan. Maybe he was saying that there's nothing specific, special about Lavan's daughters, but the blessing isn't only on Lavan, it's just in general, not to marry. His blessing is only in condition he doesn't marry a Canaanite, but not necessarily who he does marry. So meaning, the reason he told them to don't marry a Canaanite was actually just an introduction to the main event, which was to tell him to marry Lavan's daughter. So we're basically seeing that Yaakov Avinu's main intention actually was that he should go to Padan Aram and to Haran to marry Lavan's daughter, and he just prefaced it by saying, obviously you don't want to marry a Canaanite, but then what happened was Esav actually saw only the beginning. So meaning the pasuk says, now Ramosh is answering the question of why it says lemor. So meaning he's telling, with the way to understand it is, says Ramosh, that the following line, lo tikach isha, don't marry a Canaanite woman, is only in order to get to the next line. He's saying lemor. Why am I saying lo tikach isha not Canaan? Because I want to tell you to go to Padan Aram. So okay, so that's why this is a great miracle that Esav did not pay attention to this part. Why is that actually the case? What merit did Yaakov have specifically to enjoy this miracle of Esav not paying attention to all of his father's words? That's why the pasuk interjects with the event of Yaakov listening to his parents. Vayishma Yaakov el aviv elimo. Yaakov heeded his parents' advice, his parents' command, and that means that Yaakov is respecting his parents. So now Esav is going to be Hashem's going to make sure that Esav doesn't respect his parents in order to save Yaakov. Even obviously without the general righteousness of Yaakov, which we mentioned before, the entire worlds are resting on his righteousness. But there's also this specific event, mitzvat kibud avayim, vayishma laviv vanimo, and he went to Padan Aram. They came through this specifically. Hashem did an amazing miracle. That vayar Esav. What did Esav actually take out of what his father said? Only the fact ki ra'ot benot Canaan. Only the beginning of the pasuk. V'lo ki tavot benot Lavan. This is answering quite a few of the questions before. That there was why this order of events in the end of last week's parasha, that there's Vayar, he saw the entire command that Yitzchak told Yaakov. But because Yaakov, the next pasuk, listened to his parents, therefore Vayar, what did he actually listen to? What did he focus on from his father's speech? Only the first part of not marrying Canaanites, and which is follows on to the next pasuk, Vayelech Esav Yishmael. He went to Yishmael because that's the only thing that he took seriously in this command, and therefore Vayetzey Yaakov mi Beersheva. This week's parasha begins that Yaakov was able to go to Beersheva because now Esav wasn't with him. Chazaku Baruch. We'll continue next time. Which is right now. What happened now? Something happened with the USB. Okay, everyone, good evening. We are learning the Holy Alshech in the Alshech Academy, and it's Parashat Vayetzey. And we're going to be learning the deepest Torah that Ramosh is telling us regarding the journey of Yaakov Avinu as he heads out of Eretz Israel. Unfortunately, he used to go to Chutz La'aretz, and we're going to find out all about the details and the miracles and the events that transpired on that fateful day. It says, Ramoshe v'od hora lanu hu yitbarach v'amro v'yishma v'yelech. Yaakov Avinu says he listened, he heeded his parents' advice, and he went to Padan Aram, went to Haran. So what did Hashem do at that time? Hela alav HaKadosh Baruch Hu ki'ilu kvar v'yelech Padan Aram. So why does it say that he went to Padan Aram straight away, even though the pasuk after that clearly indicates that he's still on the journey, and there's a whole story with the sleeping and the dream. To say that a machshava tova, Yaakov Avinu had intention already to go and to get there because he wants to already carry out his father's wishes. So the pasuk already says, "Vayelech Padan Aram ki machshava tova, Hakadosh Baruch Hu mitzarafa lamaaseh." Already the thought level. When if it's a positive thought, Hashem takes it and makes it as if it's already been carried out, as long as the wish is truly there to do the mitzvah. To do his father's wishes. And as we saw last time, that was actually the merit that he deserved to then get the miracle of Esav's half seeing his father's wishes. As we said last time, Esav was blinded. Hashem gave him a partial unawareness of what his father was saying, even though he actually did take part in the entire command. He only saw half of it. But then, this was obviously who to help. This was to help Yaakov to be able to run away to a place where Esav isn't there, and to help Leah not to have to marry Esav. Hashem listened to the cries of Esav. She shouldn't fall into the Rasha's hands as his wife. Now we're going back to the Masorah. The 3 times the pasuk mentions the word ve'enei. So now the first time is ve'enei le'ah rakot. So first of all, what did Hashem do? Hashem made that Leah, who'd been crying and praying her whole life, so she shouldn't marry a Rasha, and rather she should marry a tzaddik. What did Hashem do? Hashem caused Esav. Hashem caused Yaakov also to be blind. What does that mean? Because it says Leah's eyes are full of tears and prayer. The next ve'enei is ve'enei Yisrael kavdu mizokim. Yaakov's eyes are also heavy and not seeing properly. What didn't Yaakov see properly? Well, obviously, the night he got married, he was fooled into thinking he married Rachel. Now, what does that make? How does that make sense? Yaakov Avinu is not noticing which woman he's marrying. He should have obviously paid more attention. So obviously, Hashem is the one that caused him to not pay attention or to not notice that it's Leah. Why? Because Hashem wanted Leah to actually make it as Yaakov's wife because she prayed. So that's the second thing. Ve'enei Israel kavdu mizokim. Let's see inside. Shenitchi tenaseh Yaakov. She wanted to marry Yaakov. Ve'enei kasher ba'erev echlif Lavan et Leah b'Leah, Rachel b'Leah. If in the night that Lavan cheated Yaakov and gave him his Leah as his wife instead of Rachel, if Yaakov that night would have heeded what he was supposed to do, that it says in the Gemara, Chazaka ein adam shoteh bekos. It's obvious that if a man doesn't drink a cup until he checks it first, which is a euphemism that a man doesn't marry a woman before he checks her. Before he checks her. If he would have checked her first, before marrying her, before sleeping with her, he would have checked who he's actually with. He would say, "What are you doing here? This is the wrong product." He wants to return it for a refund. I worked for Rachel, but I honestly wouldn't marry her. So now this is another version of blindness that Hashem caused now to Yaakov. And as we said before, Esav as well, Hashem gave blindness that he shouldn't get the idea of going to marry Leah. The gates of tears, which Leah cried to Hashem, broke open all the gates of heaven, and Hashem made sure that everything turned out like she prayed for. What did Hashem do? He made Yaakov's eyes unseeing. So he shouldn't notice before he has relations with her, so that he shouldn't send her away. Esav's eyes were also kept unseeing and unlistening. Lebaliach Medina Esav, so that Esav shouldn't come and take her. V'zeh Shiur HaMasora, this is the three mentions of V'einei. Shalidei Ma she'einei le'ra rakot, because Esav is crying, and Leah is crying, Penti Bo B'chalko shel Esav, she shouldn't get married to Esav. Ki'im, rather, what was her desire? Shetina se Yaakov, that she should marry Yaakov. Lachen Ma asa Elohim, she'einei Yisrael kavdu, Yaakov's eyes are not seeing. He is not checking her out. And also, einei Rashaim techilana, the eyes of the Rasha, which is Esav, should also be lacking and destroyed, as we mentioned earlier. Hine, says Moshe continues, Ki hu yitbarach mishaneh hachushim umachlif hatvaim l'avodat hatzadik. Here Moshe is telling us a very important principle, that Hashem would do anything. He would change the entire fabric of nature and change the entire solar system and any type of natural order for the purpose of the tzaddik's avodah. It's no big deal for Hashem. The entire creation that He created was before, in order for the tzaddik to serve Hashem with the reality that he exists in. Hashem made, created, formed, and fashioned the entire world for His glory, which the tzaddik is bringing forward. This is what Hashem is trying to point out to Yaakov. Don't you fear from Esav's wrath. Why not? He's saying, don't you worry now of Lavan. You're going to now go from the frying pan into the fire, because you're now going from one bad guy to the other bad guy. So Hashem's telling Yaakov, you've got to realize one thing. The entire creation is for you. So you shouldn't get scared of the Rishaim around you who seem to threaten you, who seem to feel like you can fall into a situation where you feel like that you're helpless, and that these people, because of their crooked ways, have an upper hand on you. Says Hashem, no. You're now going on to a difficult journey. This journey is unpredictable. It's dangerous. It's going to be a challenge. But you should know one thing: the entire creation is in your zchut. Everything, I can move in worlds and heavens in order for you to succeed. So don't you think that you're on your own. And this says Moshe, all the more so Yaakov felt broken-hearted and was losing hope. He's leaving the Holy Land. From under the wings of the Shekhinah. He's going into the Tameh part of the Shmutz La'aretz. That is why he went to pray by Har Moriah, in order to pray for this dangerous journey, because he's doing the opposite of Lech Lecha. Even in the way he's doing Lech Lecha, he's leaving his homeland, he's leaving the riches of his father, he's leaving the place where he calls home, and he's going on this unknown journey, because this is the will of Hashem, this is the will of his parents, but he's going into Chutz La'aretz, the opposite of Abraham. This seems like harsh for him, to bitter pill to swallow. But what's Hashem telling him? If you think you're small and insignificant and hopeless, you should know that's not true. The entire creation is for you, for the sake of the tzaddik. And now Hashem wanted to show him that the entire creation is revolving around him. Vahu. Ki olam hashafal, the physical realm. Ein tzarich lomar b'klot olam. Not only the rest of the globe, the rest of the world. Or Eretz Israel. Eretz Israel is also holy. So maybe Eretz Israel isn't subservient to Yaakov, because it's already got its own holiness. But not only Eretz Israel. Ki gam rosh afrot tevel, literally the peak of the world spiritually. Hu Har Moriah, the Temple Mount. Ki bo bachar Hashem shaken shmo sham, which is the place destined for Hashem's resting of the Shekhinah. What is Hashem showing him? That the entire world is here to serve you. That the most important part of the entire world will actually move to greet you. It was important for this event to happen. to show that even the holiest place in the physical world is subservient to Yaakov. It's revolving around Yaakov's needs. So he should feel the confidence and have the bitachon in his mission, and in the fact that Hashem is with him, and that Hashem favors his needs, and nothing is going to get in the way. This is why Hashem didn't make that his portion of land that he was standing should move to Har Moriah, because that wouldn't have made that much of a statement. Hashem wanted Shnetak Har Moriah Valekan, in order to show that even the highest place in the world can come to you if needed. So now Rav Moshe is going to go into a interesting account of 4 different types of kvitzat derech, which the rabbis all put under one category. But this medrash that Rav Moshe is going to bring is actually going to break it down and give it different codes, which Rav Moshe, so sensitive to nuance, will break down and explain to us what is these 4 different types of kvitzat derech. So the midrash here brings a pasuk in Tehillim 60, Psalm 60, which says, "Hirashta eretz, you have shaken up the land, bimei Avraham." The pasuk continues, "Patzamta, you have connected the lands, bimei Eliezer eved Avraham." He also had a version of kvitzat derech. "Refash shevareh, you have loosened its pieces, bimei Yaakov. Ki mata, you have tilted it, b'yemenish bibenov, in the later on time David HaMelech." So the Medrash is using 4 different types of events happening to the geological, physical earth, and all of these times are referring to different times that Hashem moved around the tectonic plates of the world in order to move people around as they needed at the time. Ki nei ra'ui, says Rav Moshe, let's now pay attention. What are these 4 different mentions of kvitzat derech? Omnam hinei arba pamim kavtza haaretz v'chol echad meshuna chavera. All the 4 times in the world there was kvitzat derech, it was all 4 times were different from the other. Halachu ki birdof Avraham et arba malachim. When did kvitzat derech happen to Avraham? When he was chasing the 4 kings. And what did the rabbis say in the midrash? Shekol pesiyah pesiyah, every step that he took, shel Avraham Avinu hayta 3 milin. It was 3 mil each step. Now a mil we know is about a kilometer. So each step was about 3 kilometers, which is a nice big step, but it's nothing crazy. It's not like instant stuff. It's just accelerating the natural human footsteps. There was a swiftness and a jumping in each step. It was a small one. Each one of 3 mil. If you take together the way the midrash I'm not sure if I understood it. Okay. It's the way the pasuk that is used by this midrash is to say that the kvitzat derech happened with Avraham was by creating a loud noise, a thunderous reaction. So it seems to be saying that because his steps were so big, it kind of, each step included a bunch of small steps. So each step was like a giant step. So that kind of like shook up the world. Here, Ashta Eretz, he caused like a rash in the earth. So that was Abraham's version. Eliezer, what was the story with Eliezer? Shebayom sheyatza, the day he left Avram's house, Higia l'Aram Naraim, which is like an instant day thing. Hayat hayta ptzima. Ptzima means to break up things. So in this case, ptzima means that he broke up the entire journey in one. He didn't break it into lots of steps. It was basically just like a 1-step thing, and he suddenly found himself there. Ki niftacha haaretz v'nitchabru sfatei hazeh. It's almost as he's saying, explaining the way it worked was that the entire space that existed between Avram's house and Naram Naraim was just removed out of the puzzle, and those two pieces were connected. So there's a breaking apart and a reconnecting based on the needs. Ach Basher Yaakov. What happened when Yaakov happened? That Hara Maria came from its place and came to Luz, and then turned back to where it belonged. Nasu Shnei Shvarim. There was two operations here, two moving of the pieces of the puzzle. V'lachen amro refa shvareya b'mei Yaakov. He loosened the pieces, and it says it plural, to say that there was two times that the pieces were loosened, like the piece of the puzzle was taken out, put somewhere else, stuck it in there, and then put back in its original place. So this was Yaakov Avinu's Kvitzat HaDerech, where the actual land was relocated. Ach kasher b'Yishbi v'Nov. What was the story with Yishbi and Nov? Shenimshach David achar Satan shenidma lo k'tzvi. The Satan wanted to get David killed, so he dressed himself into a form of a deer, and David HaMelech felt a strong need to capture this deer. So he ran after the deer until he got to Nov. And then what happened was that he was in danger by Yishbi, who was the brother of Goliath, who was avenging his brother's blood. And at the time, Avishai, the commander of David, figured out that David must be in danger, and he took the king's horse. And what happened was that on that horse he somehow arrived within seconds with Kvitzat HaDerech. And what happened was that the David HaMelech was trying to fight this Yishbi guy. He said some kind of divine name, which caused Yishbi the giant to be suspended in the air. And what happened was at the time that Avishai helped him and killed Yishbi. Now, the Gemara, how does the Gemara describe the Kvitzat HaDerech that time with Yishbi, with Avishai? Afilu haya b'sof ha'olam hesito HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'sha'a kala. So it was on the other side of the world, but Hashem tilted the earth for a short time. So Rav Moshe is understanding that to mean Hinei yechasu hadavar el hesed v'achlaka. He basically was moved and he slipped along the plane of the earth. As if Hashem tilted the earth downwards. It's as if he tumbled over and rolled all the way down from Yerushalayim until that place. Interesting way of describing Kvitzat HaDerech. Like gravity was suddenly made stronger. He was just sucked there in somehow. So this is very interesting. These four different types of Kvitzat HaDerech. I never have seen this before. But yes, and that's why the Midrash says the pasuk uses the pasuk in Tehillim. It says ki mata. Mata means it's bent, tilted. So that's the way it's describing the Haram, or the one in the time of David HaMelech. But now going back to the point here is that this was a side point describing what Kvitzat HaDerech is like, and there's different versions of it. But we're going to get back to that in a minute. So the main point we're saying is that Hashem was here to give Yaakov his confidence back, to know that there's nothing in the world that can interfere with his avodah, and that Hashem's here Hashem will move heaven and earth literally in order to ensure his safety. And the first thing we mentioned is the fact that Hashem moved the physical earth, not only just the physical earth, the holiest place of the physical earth. And now Rav Moshe is going to say a very beautiful idea that really brings all of this all together. So Hinei kidad Rabbeinu kefirish Rashi shenetak hara Moriah mimkamo avalakan. And now according to Rashi, the pasuk we use in this midrash earlier that describes the Kvitzat HaDerech of Yaakov Avinu is Refa Shvareya. That there was two moving of the pieces, as we mentioned before, that Hara Maria moved and then came back. So now says Rav Moshe, what is the purpose here? What is the story that Hashem's trying to show Yaakov? Shehu laharot et Yaakov lo yira. It's to teach and to show Yaakov not to be afraid. Ki elo kol shloshet olamot Tfelim alav u'mushabadim lo. All the three olamot, all the three realms of reality are completely subservient and are working for him. Ukamam aram, as the midrash, very powerful midrash that says on the pasuk in Isaiah 43. The pasuk says, Boracha Yaakov, your creator is Yaakov, v'yotzrecha Yisrael, the one who formed you is Yisrael. What does that mean? The creator is Yaakov. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem said the following, and Ramosh is going to take apart this midrash and really to realize what's going on here. Hashem said the following, Olami, Olami, my world, mi baracha, who created you? And the answer Hashem gives is Yaakov baracha, Yaakov yitzarcha. Yaakov created you and Yaakov formed you. That's the midrash. And Hashem is telling the world, you should know who created you, you should know how you exist through Yaakov. But first we're going to describe, Rosh is going to ask a few little observations, what the midrash is saying. But some level, olami, olami. Why does the midrash refer to Hashem's addressing the earth and saying, my world, twice? What's the two different words of forming and creating? Achu. This is a very important thing Ramosh is going to tell us, and it's a very powerful idea that I really enjoyed seeing today. Achu ki shloshet ha'olamot yitpardu be'echut. There's three different levels of quality in the three worlds. What are the three worlds? Olam hashafal, the lower worlds, the physical world. The Olam HaGalgalim, and the world of the galaxies and the stars. Hem Baalei Geshem, they are physical. So even though they are intermediates, the physical, the galaxies and the stars are the source of Shefa coming from the spiritual, kind of that place of where the spiritual Shefa becomes destined to come down into the physical. But at the end of the day, these are physical planets made out of physical matter. But the Shel Malachim, however, the highest world in this context of three worlds, is the world of angels, which is purely spiritual. Val Shnei Sugim Amar Olami Olami. The two types here. We have the physical and the spiritual, right? Because the first two are basically the same in the sense of the physical. So Olami Olami, they're my two different types of worlds. My physical worlds and my spiritual worlds. And what do we say? Yaakov baracha. Yaakov created you. Yaakov formed you. So it says Ramoshe, the physical worlds it fits with the context of Yaakov created you, because they are created things. They don't have specific spiritual essence per se, but the spiritual world, which is only spiritual, Bal Suga Ruchani, Bal Tzura, spirituality is form. Yeah, therefore it says Yaakov Yitzarcha. Okay, so Ramosha just broke down this midrash explaining that all three realms of reality are subservient to Yaakov because they were created in his zchut.
They were created before Yaakov.
Oh, so he's going to tell us in a few minutes what that means really, that Hashem creates the world for the tzaddikim. Ultimately, he says that Hashem knew. Like it says in the Gemara that what was the reason for creation? Hashem took advice, it says, in the souls of the tzaddikim, and he created the world. He really saw the pleasure that he's going to get from them, and therefore he sprinkled them in all generations, to have a few of them, right? There, as the Tanya brings in the beginning, that the Hashem saw there's only a few righteous ones, and he planted them in all generations. So meaning that the whole concept of creation is for the righteous acts of those who serve Hashem, specifically the tzaddikim. So therefore, because the entire creation is dependent on Him, it's only right that it should be subservient to Him, especially subservient to His needs of serving Hashem. V'lachen yitachen, says Rav Moshe, it is possible to say that Hashem was showing Yaakov how all three of these realms of reality are subservient to Him. So that the first thing was the physical realm, showing him that the entire mountain of Moriah will move for him. It's not just any land. Move China. Okay, cool. Klalut Eretz Israel. Eretz Israel regular. No. Kim Gam Hara Moriah Shekeneged Shar Shamayim. Hara Moriah, which is the gateway to heaven, become a Mizbeach. The place of where the altar is. Shulukach Misham Afar Sha'asami Menu Yitbarach Et Adam Yitzir Kapav Shu Chalato Shel Olam. The entire mankind was created from where? From dust, from earth. Where was that earth taken from? From the place of the Mizbeach. So in a way, Yaakov will have to agree that at least that place is higher than him, because this is where he's coming from. His whole physical existence comes from this place. Hashem told him, no. Gam hu. Asher kol tuva olam hashafal. The entire concentration of any good that exists in the physical world is all concentrated on the Hara Moriah. That entire existence, nekarim kamova got uprooted and was brought towards him. That was the level of the physical world. Now we move over to the solar system and the galaxies. Ki gam olam hagalgalim meshubad elav. Where do we see that? Ki ba hashemesh. The sunset. In order, really, like we said before, the question was, the sun he can fall asleep. If Hashem wants him to sleep in this place, he can fall asleep without the sun setting. He can get instant melatonin increase in his system and he'll just fall asleep. But Hashem wanted it to be a miracle that is above nature in terms of the planets and the solar system and the galaxies, to show him that it's all subservient to him. V'gam olam malachim, the highest world of this trio of worlds, which is the Malachim. In his dream he saw V'hinei Malachei Elohim Olim V'yodim Bo. What does it mean, Bo? In Yaakov. Yaakov is a channel for the Malachim. The Malachim are happening through him. These angels were actually serving him. Asher livuhu ba'aretz, as the Midrash says, they were actually angels that were accompanying him. They were accompanying him in Eretz Israel, and there were new angels that were going to accompany him in Chutz La'aretz. So Yaakov Avinu had angels at his disposal. At his disposal, just like minions of angels. All the Rabbeinu. Or according to the Midrash, there's a Midrash that says that the angel that came to destroy Sodom, because they misspoke and said that we are going to destroy when they spoke to Lot, for 138 years they weren't allowed to go back up to Shamayim. So they were waiting at the gate of heaven to get permission to go up for 138 years until Yaakov Avinu came. Now suddenly there was a big etratzon, a big time of mercy, to allow even those banished angels to come up now. This is why it says Olim first, because there were two angels that were stuck down here. So again we see how Yaakov Avinu is able to help the angels because he's above them. In Yaakov Avinu's chut, he was able to be metaken even the Malachim. It was all to honor Yaakov, to show that even though they weren't able to go up, the Chavod Yaakov, now they're able to go. They need him. They will also serve him and accompany him. ואין על יעקב ניצב עליו למעלה ממנו מכל יצורי העולמות כולם בלתי עם הוויה לבדו. So what's the pasuk saying? והנה הוויה י' כ' ו' כ' ניצב עליו, to show that who is above Yaakov, not the angels, not the galaxies, not the physical land, only Havaya. That's the only thing that is above Yaakov.
What was the proof of that?
As the pasuk says in his dream, after he sees the angels, he says v'hinei Havaya nitzav alav. Who is standing above him? The Yud Kei Vav Kei himself. That was the only thing. Afilu rechev Elohim she'Hashem bam. Even the Merkava that usually Hashem rides and reveals himself through, even that wasn't above Yaakov. Ki ach bo bachar lemerkava lo. Now Yaakov is the chariot. Yaakov is the one that is revealing Hashem, and he's above the angels. Which is why the pasuk says that's what the main message of his dream was, as we see also in the rest of the dream that Hashem was telling him, I'm going to be with you, and I'm going to protect you. And in order to actually give credence to the message he was giving to him, he started off by showing him, visualizing to him how it's actually anything will be done for his needs. We continue, right? Well, Peter Kenu, as a continuation of this theme, Shiratza Hashem Heraot Lo Ki Hashlosha Olamot Kulam Nivru Shem, sure that all of in reality, all the three realms of reality were created for his service. V'sarim el mashmato, they're subservient to him. V'nei bayim nechvadil shartor, they come to honor him and to be his butlers. Nomar ki ratza hu yitbarach yalin sham, v'yishka b'makom hahu. Hashem wanted, in order to emphasize this point, that he should actually sleep in this in the place, in this holy place. V'yiten merashotav avnei mizbech akadat Yitzchak. He should take the stones on the mizbech, which Yitzchak, his father, was bound upon, ready to be sacrificed. K'mamaram b'pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, as the Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer says, that these stones were the mizbech stones. L'man yakir ki ha'makom meshu'abad tachtav, to show that all of these crazy, beautiful things, they're all underneath him. He's lying on top of them. Why? Because he is the sustainer of all of these things. That's why it was so important that Yaakov Avinu should sleep in this holy place, on the holy stones, to show that all of this is beneath him. Yaakov didn't know until the morning that he was actually in Har Moriah. As it says, he went to sleep, he didn't know it was a holy place. And in the morning he wakes up after the dream, he's like, wow, what's going on? And I didn't know I was in a holy place. Why did I have to be in this way that he didn't know? And this is why the pasuk says, he happened upon this place without knowing that it was that. Shaya beluz, really he was in Luz, which is far away. Therefore he didn't know he was sleeping in a holy land. Which is why he felt that he was allowed to sleep, because he was just sleeping in a random place. So you're saying that he went to sleep in Luz. In his head he was in Luz. So then the question arises, why didn't he continue? If he thinks he hasn't yet reached the mountain, the Har Moriah, so he should continue, that's where he's heading. He was supposed to make it, but suddenly it became night. And he couldn't travel in the night. They came, because he thought he was in Luz. So there's no significance to the stones here. He just grabbed a couple of stones. He put it around his head, and he used them. Hashem wanted him to lie to show that all of this is under his control. If Yaakov would have been aware of the holiness of where he was, obviously he wouldn't have slept there. As Rashi says in the pasuk, "Vanochi lo yadati." I didn't know this was holy. Says Rashi, "She'ilu yadati lo yashanti kan." If I would have known, obviously I wouldn't have slept here. So which is why Hashem had to make this whole strange turn of events, that he should sleep here and get the message of his control and his central role in the existence of reality. V'hinei en safek ki halo gam b'nei Yaakov yipaleh. Yaakov will obviously find this all very wondrous and strange, that everything is now under his control and it's also in his service. Al mazeh shilo yitbarach masei adav v'kol shatachad ragla. Why did Hashem give him the leadership of all of creation, and now everything's under his control? Al ken horaho ma'oreh sulam ma'achlom. Which is why Hashem wanted to emphasize what is really the purpose of Yaakov being on top of the ladder, on top of the food chain, and that's what this dream was trying to portray. That was the prophecy of this dream, to show that what Laman hodio ki gam ki kol tzaddik mekayem olamot. Obviously, every righteous person is holding the worlds together and brings us a merit for the existence of the world. But who ole al gabehem? Yaakov, he's on top of all the tzaddikim. V'hu, why? Ki alol masha olam hashafel chamri hu havev nifsad. How So he's saying as follows: because the lower world is physical, is made out of matter. Hu hovev nifsad. The nature of matter is that it doesn't last forever. It exists and then it wastes away. Entropy, decays. ואיזה הדרך יהי מבוא, לבוא בו שפע, מסיבת הסיבות, אל חומר אחור. How can the life force and the energy come from above, from the root of all causes, the cause of all causes, come down to the physical realm? ואיזה חבל ישלשלהו מן העולם העליון עד השפל? How can you bring down and connect the lower world to the higher worlds? מי יקשרם להיות מקבלין דם ודם ממעלה למטה? Who will make the connection between the higher worlds and the lower worlds? מי ייתן בהם רוח להחיותם? Who will bring the Spirit of God into the world? גם את השפל, not only in the physical, גם את עולם הגלגלים. This is also true. We need to understand how the realm of the galaxies, which are also physical bodies of planets, כי גם הוא גשמי כאחיו. אם לא על ידי שפע רוחני, היורד מאיתו יתברך מהעולם העליון. So it seems that what he's saying is that the physical world only has existence because there's spiritual energy that exists inside it. It's like the soul of the physical existence, whereas we know that with the whole concept of particles, that the entire matter of the world is really a tennis ball. The entire universe can be condensed into a tennis ball, and it's only the centrifugal force of the way the atoms move around. I don't know too much about this stuff, but it seems to be that the entire body of the world, the way it exists, is with energy it's moving inside of it, and that's actually what gives the matter its existence. And that's on a scientific level, but on a spiritual level, it's all the same thing. That what keeps the world alive is the shefa ruchani, the spiritual flow of life force that comes into the world. So what did Hashem do? How did Hashem make that this physical world should be infused with life force of the spiritual? This is where the souls of the tzaddikim come, the souls of the Jewish people come into play. So Hashem created the physical world with bodies that are able to house souls. Machonot neshamot kedoshot asher bara. Asher koach bahem, the souls which are a part of God have the ability to sustain the world. They should be able to have its existence, and it shouldn't disintegrate. Here says the point that we mentioned before, that Hashem, because he knew that there weren't that many tzaddikim, already from the beginning of creation, he separated and broke apart the different tzaddikim to be in different generations. B'chol dor v'dor, l'bnei tikun ha'olam, in order that the world should have an existence and be able to be tikkun, l'hakimo u'l'kaimo b'tzaddikim sheb'chol dor v'dor, asher hem be'emet yisod olam. The foundation and the pillars of the world is indeed the tzaddik. Without the tzaddik, there would be no existence. And how? So that's the first concept of the way. Obviously, the physical would not exist without a spiritual soul, right? As we know with the human body doesn't have a soul. Automatically, it decays very quickly. The same is true with the physical world. But how do we infuse a physical world with a spiritual life force? Here comes human tzaddik, that is that place of connection of spiritual and physical, and that's what allows for the spiritual and physical to exist on the macro level. And as we know, this is also connected to the Beit HaMikdash, right? The Beit HaMikdash is the ladder that it connects its physical and spiritual, right? It's called the neck. In Shir HaShirim, the Beit HaMikdash is called the neck, because it's the point of connection between above and below. So now we're going to see how within the human being itself, we have the microcosm of this macro idea of soul being infused into matter. Hashem made the human himself as a small microcosm of the world. HaKolel kol arba olamot. Min hashafal el ha'alyon. Now we're introducing the fourth world. Besides the physical, the galaxies, the angels, there's also olam ha'elyon, which we'll see in a minute. Which obviously is, in the Kabbalistic language, this would be Hassidut, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah. This is more the philosophical language of the early Rishonim. So the first level of human being is his physical makeup, which is made out of the 4 elements. The 4 elements are the makeup of the entire physical universe up until the physical realm of the galaxies and of the planets. Now it's interesting because the planets are actually also made out of physical matter, but the Rambam brings from the Rambam as well, in the beginning of the Bereshit, he says that the original potential state of reality, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim et haaretz. He says there was the potential hiyuli, he calls it, the pre-matter existence for the physical earth, which is planet Earth, and then there was another pre-matter for Shamayim, which he says on that level is all the planets and the galaxies. So they're made out of different matter. The four elements, according to these early rabbis, is only the 4 elements used to create the physical world, whereas the physical matter of the spheres and the rolling around in space are made from different energy. The matter is also different. So that's what he's saying here, that there's the physical makeup of the human, and then what's the second part of the human? What's the more inner layer? Who are nefesh hachiyunit, the physical, the life-giving force of a human being, like his basically, you could call it the animal soul or the basic life force of the human. Hanotenet chiyut v'tnuah b'chomer, which gives life and movement, the ability to move in the physical. Halo hi me'echut olam hagalgalim. And this is parallel to the macro level of the galaxies, which are constantly in motion. So motion comes from that level in the parallel of the macro and the micro. The spirit of a man, which isn't just the life force, it's already his spirit with his emotions and his life's mission and everything, which is on the parallel to the angels. The malachim are also considered spirits. The soul, the neshama, the true neshama, is from Atzilut. So we have nefesh, ruach, neshama, and the guf. So that's the 4 levels. The guf is the physical. Then we have nefesh, which is the life force. The ruach is the spirit of the person, his personality, his life, his spirit that keeps going. And then the neshama is this connection to the beyond, the true godly spark that comes from Atzilut, which is the Olam Ha'elyon, he calls it here. These 4 parts in every human being, every person has a spark. His root is rooted in all the different worlds. So meaning that every human being has a root for his body in the physical world. He has a root for his nefesh in the galaxy world. He has a root for his ruach in the world of angels, and he has a root of his neshama in the world of the Olam Alyon, Olam Atzilut. Validei ken, because he's rooted in these places, b'kaimo Torah mitzvot. When he does Torah, learning Torah, doing mitzvot, asher yaseh b'arbat chalakav ve'ele. When a person does anything, he's using all of his 4 different levels of his existence. Halo yo'orer v'yikadesh shorashav kulam. He's infusing and bringing down extra holiness in his root of where his soul comes from or where his existence comes from. And now here comes the point that we mentioned before. How does the physical world, the physical plane of reality exist without receiving spiritual energy? It's because a human being doing Torah mitzvot uses his physical body along with his 3 different levels of soul to do a mitzvah. So he's infused, doing that fusion of the physical and the spiritual, and that causes it to exist also on the macro level. We're creating the cohesiveness and the proper functioning and the infusion of spirituality into the physical through our act of mitzvot, which is on the micro level. Which causes the shefa to come down all the way down. He's actually keeping the world together. So this is why Yaakov Avinu is obviously not just a regular human, a regular Jew. This is true to every Jew. So now we're going to see how Yaakov Avinu is even more than that. Hashem is showing Yaakov, he didn't just tell him, he actually showed him, made him see it physically. He showed him a vision of all of these things. Hashem told him that Yaakov, you are above and beyond any other tzaddik who also is on a high level with all of these four levels of his existence. Most people, the ladder of their existence starts off with the physical, nefesh, ruach, neshama. You are the other way around. That's what makes you so unique, says Hashem to Yaakov. You've perfected your character and your being so much. Ki ata sulam mutzav artza bipat hachomer v'roshcha hu hanefesh. So you're a ladder that's on the ground, on the physical level. V'roshcha hu hanefesh hatavek al hachomer b'tzad ma gam b'kever kanoda. So the nefesh is the lowest level of a person's life force. And as we know, a kever in the language of the Mishnah is called a nefesh, because at least part of the nefesh remains in the kever. Now, so he's saying that your nefesh, Yaakov, which a usual person only gets its source in the world of galaxies and orbits of the planets, when it comes to you, Enosh Kisha b'nei Adam shemagim ad hagalgalim, you don't only go there. Rak hashamayma, your nefesh is rooted in the world of angels. Hem hashamayim elonim ba'olam malachim, which is why it says hashamayma with a hay at the end, to show that it's an even higher heaven. V'lachelek hashlishi, when the usual spirit, which a normal person, a normal Jew is aware from the world of angels, with you, it's even higher. Zehu l'mala mehem, you're higher than them. Shehem olim mechitzatam v'yordim bo ad mechitzatam ki l'mala mehem hu. The angels, olim v'yordim bo, they go into your spirit. So meaning they're coming in and out, coming down from where you exist, which is higher than the angels, and they're going to their space. So this is where we see that you are higher than the angels. So what he's saying is, when it comes to Yaakov Avinu's neshama, which were the usual Jews from Atzilut, from the under the wings of the Shechina, ki en shoret nishmato b'tachat kanfei ha-Shechina. Your soul isn't like every other soul that is under the wings of the Shechina, which is in the Shechina in Olam Atzilut, because that's still a lower level. Rak me'eichut elyon hamityaches al Shem HaGadol. Right, we know there's a difference between the Shechina and Kucha Brichu, which is Yud Kei Vav Kei, and Elokim, or Aleph Daled Nun Yud. So the usual soul is from the Malchut, from the Shechina. But Yaakov Avinu's soul is even higher. It's Yud Kei Vav Kei. As we know, Yaakov Avinu is a Rampin.
Are we saying that all neshamot are from Yud Kei Vav Kei, connected to Lohai Mema?
So there is obviously the root. The Tanya talks about how every soul is rooted in Chachma of Atzilut, on its purest, like mamish root level. But eventually there is a certain level of where the soul obviously goes down the chain of worlds to come down to the physical world. How much does it get diminished as it comes down? Like where is its real root? Like there's the root of like all souls, and then where's like my specific place that I'm connected to? And most souls are from Tachat Kisei Kavod, right? Which is the Malchut area of the Shechina. And who say Yaakov Avinu's soul, as we know, all the Avot really were all the Sfirot of Atzilut, right? The Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, right? So Yaakov Avinu specifically, he was Shem Havaya. He didn't Hashem Nitzav Alav, saying that your soul is mamish the place where it's connected to Yud Kei Vav Kei. So now, says Rav Moshe, V'chol zeh leman odio. Why is Hashem telling him all this stuff? He's explaining to him why he actually has this crazy power to actually be in control of reality. Because this is who he is. This is where his soul is existence. This is his place of existence. It's not for no reason that he's in control of reality. The world was created in his merit. As we saw the Medrash before, Olami, Olami, mi baracha, who created you? Who created you, world? You think you exist? Yaakov bracha, Yaakov itzarcha. Yaakov created you. It's unbelievable words. Like, obviously, you have to know what Moshe is telling us is in his merit. But these words just saying, like Hashem's telling the world, Yaakov created you.
But the problem with that is if he really is in charge of everything, how come things like, the Shechem happen to him? How does somebody who controls everything get Shechem put onto him?
He didn't have an easy life, Yaakov, by any stretch of the imagination. Like, he even complained to Paro. The first thing he said is like, "Oh, my life's been terrible."
Yeah, which is a direct. Well, there's arguments for it, but it's a direct contrast against this idea that he was in control. It's as if he wasn't in control. From Yaakov's perspective, it looks like he's not in control. He's not in control of his son leaving him. He's not in control of so many things. So how can you understand this concept at the same time when you have so many things going against you?
At the end of the day, no, it's a good question. I think ultimately Hashem was always there to save him. After Shechem, it says that there was the fear of God was placed upon all the people in his surroundings. So ultimately, he always came out of it, right? With Yaakov, with Esav, he managed to overcome the angel. So I don't think it means that his life will be wrought with challenges. It just means that Hashem's telling him there will be challenges, but you'll come out victorious. So don't fear the challenges. He's telling him there'll be challenges. He's telling him Esav's a challenge, Lavan's a challenge, and like you say, there's more. But being controlled doesn't necessarily mean changing God's plan. It means that having the perseverance to come out at the other end of it. Like David HaMelech, who was a king, he had the most suffering in his life. So it does seem like almost in a way that tzaddikim that are in control, they're prepared to take the most upon themselves because they're.
Where's the control if you can't control? That's what it's.
So again, control doesn't mean to manipulate. It means to be able to have things work above nature, that even though you have all of these forces coming against you, because that's the nature of the world, that the evil forces try to take control, it means that you have the last word is yours. Just like Hashem, right? Hashem's in control of the world, but he lets all kinds of stuff happen because that's the story of creation. But we know that Vayom Ahui Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. So again, like these tzaddikim, they didn't look for pleasurable lives. Like it says, like tzaddikim want to have peace, and then the Hashem makes sure that they always have trouble. Right? It's in a way, especially because they actually, like he said before, like these souls are so high up that they're so connected to Hashem that they know the plan makes sense. Like they're in on it. They're in on it, and Hashem's telling them, just don't fear the short reign of the Rishaim, that they have their moment of glory, and they look fearful from the outside. He's basically convincing him that it seems to be that you don't like, first things first, you should know that you are going to persevere. Everyone else is going to fall around you, like we say, right? Like we say in the Yosher Beseter, whatever's with Hashem, people are going to fall to your left, to your right, and you're going to come out victorious. But it's for sure. Again, like we know, for example, like Mitzrayim had to happen. Mitzrayim wasn't in control. Yaakov was always hoping that it wouldn't have to happen. He was hoping to bring the Geula before that, but it says right, if it wouldn't have happened, the story with Yosef, they would have to go down in chains. So it's always things that have to happen, and Hashem makes sure that they come out victorious and they survive it all. It's with Hashem. I think we'll leave it here maybe. Let's just see. Yeah, let's just finish a few more lines. It's okay. So that's the story. So Hashem's saying that all olami, my two worlds I created for you, the physical and the spiritual. Olam hazeh, olam haba. You created them, it's all in your zchut. And, B'ezrat Hashem, we should merit to see Yaakov Avinu and the Mashiach and the Geula Shlema b'mehera b'yameinu, and know that Hashem is with us. We are the fabric of reality. Hashem, the world wouldn't be here without us. So it means that we're going to have the last laugh. B'ezrat Hashem, B'kara Mamash.
Glad. Thank you so much.
Chazak Baruch.